And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center, deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty, mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the mothership at coalitionradio.us. We've entered what we call the Libertarian Hour here, so in our first segment, I got the opportunity to talk with yesterday for the first time a gentleman who is running for nothing less than the governorship of the great state of Kentucky, a place I have yet to have the pleasure of going. I've driven through Tennessee way too late at night, and I've never had a chance to spend quality time in Kentucky. That's something I got to change, because as I've gotten to know folks who are Kentucky libertarians, I have grown to admire the earnestness, the dedication to the cause, the spirit of what is truly one of America's great states, with some really cool products that they make. But that's another time, another show. I'd like to welcome John Hicks to the show. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Great to be here, Pat. Thank you for having me. And yes, Kentucky is a beautiful state, and you definitely need to get down here.
Yeah, you guys should have the convention, since they won't let us. We met because I was going to say, you guys should have the convention. They won't let us here in Rhode Island. They don't like us in New England. I think that's the problem. But we met because of an issue that seems to raise its head every year. The Libertarian Party is the third largest political party in America. 4.5 million Americans voted for our presidential candidate, Gary Johnson, and his vice presidential candidate, Governor Bill Weld, in the 2016 election. We qualified as ballot status in every single state and the District of Columbia. The first time that anyone had done so, since the late H. Ross Perot had done so many years ago. This, despite the very best efforts of what we refer to lovingly, and I'm being sarcastic, as the duopoly. And of course, that's the look-alike, act-alike, Me Too of the political world, the Republican and the Democratic parties. Well, in the years post-2016, as we gear up for the 2020 elections, if you will, the duopoly is at it again. And this time with seemingly a renewed ferocity. And it happens everywhere, in states like Rhode Island, states like Ohio, and now sadly states like Kentucky. The Kentucky Libertarian Party has reached the second tier of a three-step process to becoming a full-blown political party, at least in the eyes of the state, as if that should matter. But it matters to folks who would seek to ostracize us, to exclude us, to, if I can use the most hated word in any Democrat's lexicon, to disenfranchise us, because that's exactly what they're attempting to do. At every turn, they'll use any excuse whatsoever to preclude any type of outside involvement by the Libertarian Party. The first reason is obvious, because we're always right. The second obvious reason is blind fear. So tell me about, and we're going to spend most of the show talking about your candidacy, the state of Kentucky issues, but let's just spend 3 or 4 minutes on some place called Fancy Farm. What is, for the love of God, Fancy Farm, Kentucky?
Well, Fancy Farm is, let's see, is it incorporated? I'm not sure. It is a community in far western Kentucky. And I think it's fair to say it's centered on the Catholic Church in that community, St. Jerome Catholic Church. And St. Jerome, like most Catholic churches that I know of, likes to have a summer festival. And for some reason, over the years, this has been going on for quite a while, over the years, that particular festival, the Fancy Farm Picnic, St. Jerome's Picnic, has become a stopping off point, actually a traditional stopping off point for political candidates. And because of the timing of it, I guess it's sort of the formal or the informal launch of the down and dirty part of the campaigns, right, where the candidates are really going at each other. And so it's become a traditional place for any candidate to be there and politic. And I guess over the years they formalized that a bit and actually have started a formal schedule of political speeches. Heretofore, it's just been literally some speeches. People talk politicking off the cuff, and now as a formal program. And we thought that every candidate that was on the ballot in Fancy Farm, at least, would be invited to speak and be on the program. And we were a bit disappointed to hear that they were not going to include us on the program. This is an off-year election in Kentucky where the only people running, the only offices running or open are the statewide offices. So we Libertarians are on 3 or 4 of the 7 offices that are being filled have Libertarian candidates. So we're going to be all over the ballot, all over the state, including in Fancy Farm. So we think we should be speaking there, and so far we haven't gotten that invitation.
You folks used all the appropriate channels to apply to be part of it. I saw the letter from the political director, the self-described political director of the event, Mr. Wilson, whose number, by the way, we've joyfully shared with folks on a variety of Facebook locations, and I understand people have been calling, and I hope people would take the time this weekend to call. The propriety, if you will, of a religious organization having a political director is somewhat suspect. Now, I'm a firm believer in free speech, but anyone who's listened to this show knows I'm, just about set myself on fire for free speech. But a political director for an organization that enjoys the tax-free benefits of the United States under Chapter 501c3 is specifically, in a case of a religious organization, subject to something called the Johnson Amendment. And my understanding, that's actually none other than Lyndon Baines Johnson, who established the rules saying that, well, you don't get to do politics if you're tax exempt. Having a political director, picking and choosing who gets to go on, is a clear display of being overtly political. And I'm going to let you make we'll talk about this offline. Our conversations, it struck me that you're a gentleman, that you approach politics with an air of gravity and maturity that's reflective of your experience in life. I'm not that smart, I'm not that nice, and I'm not that polite. So we'll talk about that, but I think there needs to be as my little one said when she was a tiny child, there needs to be consequences, and because I'm not happy. Has anyone reached out to you at all about this, or have they just essentially what we call the coalition turtling? They're just going in the deep hide.
Well, I don't know that anyone's reached out since that letter. Actually, I think the letter is somewhat conciliatory, and in Mr. Wilson's defense, I have a hunch that title is simply for the organizing the political program on the picnic. And I doubt if he's the political director of the parish, but I don't know. That was rather. It wasn't a formal letterhead that was written on, so it's hard to know. Right. But he indicated that they had discussed it, and he kind of pointed the finger at the pastor of the church as making the final decision. So I get the impression there was some discussion about it, and so I'm hopeful that maybe tomorrow when I show up, they'll have some second thought.
Well, I hope, I'm going to ask every libertarian to look to the coalition Facebook page, facebook.com/coalition radio, and continue to call Mr. Wilson, whose number is clearly posted. By the way, that is a number that was shared by the church, so we're not trying to dox him or vox him or whatever the kids call it now. We're not trying to display private information. That was a number that they've readily shared as being the contact number for this organization. It's just terribly disappointing that everyone would seem to think that this is okay. I guess I expect more of community leaders. Then again, as libertarians, we've never been shocked or disappointed, have we, in our low expectations? But let's talk about the election itself, because first of all, give us a little bit of your background. How did you get involved in the libertarian movement?
I kind of drifted. I'm an old Goldwater conservative. I mean, literally. I was in high school when Goldwater ran, and I was active in his campaign. Mm-hmm. And I kind of drifted away. I mean, at that time, Goldwater was essentially a libertarian. We didn't use the word back then. And I was a Republican for those ideas, and I thought I would be a Republican the rest of my life. And the Republican party's kind of shifted, actually started shifting almost immediately after that election. And it's not really, it's not libertarian anymore. They want to impose their ideas on other people, just like the other party does. So that's not our way. So I started voting libertarian whenever there was a libertarian candidate available to vote for, and finally, I guess probably it wasn't until the Gary Johnson. I don't think I registered libertarian until 2016.
Right.
I know I was registered for Gary Johnson, and I got involved with the local party, and they were happy to have me. And they were recruiting candidates for last year's election when we had our legislature up for election. I ran for state house, and I learned a lot. I didn't do all that well, but got my 2% at least, and met a lot of people, and found it to be really interesting. This year we were. It is different, as I say. There's only 7 offices to fill, and I was saying we need to get 7 people nominated, and other people said, "Okay, John, step up." So I'm running, and I'm having a ball. It's really interesting. I mean, I think it's a wonderful time to be running as a libertarian. I mean. And frankly, the fancy foreign people are playing right into our hands, because one of our issues is the whole idea of election reform. I'm running on three different themes: liberty, stability, and election reform. And when I say election reform, I mean a 2-step process, starting with runoff voting, which would essentially eliminate the spoiler effect that keeps people from wanting to vote for a third party. Even if they favor the third party candidate, they're afraid that one of the other 2 evil people will, the worst of the other 2 will win, rather than the second worst of the other 2 will win. So if we had runoff voting, and of course now that we have computers, we can have instant runoff voting. We don't have to have a second round of voting. We can vote for our first, second, third choice when we first visit the polls, and then we can count the votes such that the person who comes in last gets eliminated, and then we recount the votes and have a runoff vote right on the spot, and repeat that process until somebody gets a majority of the votes. Right now, this year, one of our 2 candidates, a Democratic candidate, only got 37% of the vote in the primary. That's hardly democratic. And of course, I'm hoping to get my plurality and become governor. But if I'm not elected governor, I just might be the spoiler. Where the votes that I get are enough to affect the election. So.
Is there any debates lined up yet? Are you going to challenge them to a debate?
Yes, they are debating. That's another thing that we're up against as third parties. Traditionally, KET, Kentucky Educational Television, our local PBS network, hosts debates for all the candidates. We were expecting to get invited to that, and the criterion this year is that we have to raise $100,000, which is a little high for our budget. We're not going to say we're not going to do that. We're going to try, but that's going to be a big haul if we're going to make that.
Right.
So it doesn't look like. Well, no, I didn't say that. Hopefully, it's going to be difficult, but we're going to try. And then the 2 candidates, the Democrat and Republican, have agreed to 4 more debates. So there are going to be a total of 5 debates between the 2 of them. I would love to be included in all 5, of course. But part of what I'm running on is civility, and part of the reason why we're doing that is that the 2 of them are arch rivals, So the more debates they have, probably the more that issue of civility will will rise to the top. So we're waiting to see how that works out.
Right, and what I find fascinating is the juxtaposition of the Democratic candidates' debates as they are ongoing with incidents like tomorrow at Fancy Farm, where one of the issues was the amount of time, the implication being that we didn't have enough time, or what happens at the presidential debates where we can't possibly have 3 people or 4 people up on the rostrum because that would be confusing somehow, and yet you've got 20, 21 characters, you know, at least philosophically resembling nothing less than the initial bar scene in the first Star Wars movie, up there on TV, you know, endlessly invading the our Facebook feed so they could get the $1 and get enough contributions to fit whatever the movie target for this debate coming up is. It's to see such blatant and utter hypocrisy in the electoral system is just terrible. Kentucky, talk to me about Kentucky as a state. Each state that I've had the pleasure of interviewing candidates from has its own unique flavor, obviously, its own heritage, traditions, makeup. I've been blessed by having the opportunity to have conversations with dozens of candidates from around the nation, and it's been an eye opener. What are the big issues facing Kentuckians right now?
Well, I would say education in one way or another is a big issue. I'm trying to focus on that. The other two are actually focusing on different facets of that. Our governor, I should maybe explain it. The two candidates, the 2 other candidates are the incumbent Republican governor, Matt Bevin, and the incumbent Attorney General, Democrat Andy Beshear. Where was I? What are the issues? So Governor Bevin has been pushing for pension reform. Kentucky has the worst finance. You know, all the states are in trouble, underwater with their pension financing, but Kentucky is the worst. And Governor Bevin, to his credit, decided that he was tired of kicking that can down the road, and that we should tackle that. And it's a complicated issue, and he's managed to get everybody yelling at him. Of course, he wants to change go from a defined benefit program, the traditional pension, to a defined contribution program, more like the 401k, which is what private industry has done. And there are 4 or 5 different pension funds. They all have different constituencies. They're all up in arms about one thing or another. One of those pension funds is the teachers' pension. Right. Teachers are very dependent on their pension because they don't have Social Security in Kentucky. They don't participate in that, so they're very, very possessive, as they should be, of their contract for a pension. And the teachers, the governor has pretty much gotten all the teachers mad at him. Perhaps they're being egged on by the teachers union, but it's a real standoff, and it's a real shame because we should be focusing on education in general, and not diverted by this. Mr. Bevin, like Mr. Trump, has some good policies, but his rhetoric is not doesn't give you the warm fuzzies.
Right.
does not bring us together.
Right.
So
if you were to give the Kentucky economy right now a report card, you know, how are things for working folks? Is industry on the growth? You know, if you were to ask a New Englander what he thinks about Kentucky, and obviously we talk about horses, bourbon, and Rick Pitino. You know, not necessarily in that order. We have a thing with Rick Pitino around here. It's kind of he left us longer before he left you guys. But you know, what is the state of the economy?
Well, I would say it's mixed, like much of the economy. We've got some bright spots. You know, bourbon, for example, is booming. I mean, people are making Mecca pilgrimages to Kentucky to take the bourbon tour.
Right.
One interesting growth industry is the hemp industry.
Right.
We've it's been a long struggle, but we're finally once again returning to growing hemp as a cash crop in Kentucky. It used to be the biggest cash crop in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it was illegal for many years. Mm-hmm. Thanks to efforts of many people over the past 5 or 10 years, we finally gotten it so that it can be grown. It's still highly regulated, but it's really growing fast now. I mean, the industry is growing fast, and hemp grows fast too. That's one of the nice things about it.
Interesting. Okay. How about manufacturing? What you know, you know, what in what cities of Kentucky are the primary manufacturing bases? Where do you see a lot of growth in terms of the economy, and who's getting, if anybody, left behind? What, if you can give us a snapshot on that?
You know, I don't have good statistics on that, frankly, Pat. I'm enough of a free marketer that I don't believe we should force the economy in one direction or another. Manufacturing, we do have, we've traditionally had some good manufacturing industries. I got my start at General Electric Appliance Part. The automobile industry, we have 2 Ford plants here in Louisville. My running mate, Ann Cormican, works at the Toyota plant in Georgetown, Kentucky. We have a Corvette plant down in Bowling Green. So we have a fair share of manufacturing, I think. I don't know if we of course, now Governor Bevin has gone to great trouble to try to attract an aluminum, I'm not sure if it's a smelter or what, an aluminum manufacturing company in eastern Kentucky. Of course, part of the problem with our economy, as you know, I'm sure, is that coal has always been a big part of the industry of our economy for probably the past 100 years, and it's virtually gone now. So the big problem is, what do we do to replace that? And Governor Bevin has tried to attract an aluminum plant in eastern Kentucky. Unfortunately, there's some question about the financing of it, this, that, and the other. And I don't know, I might just always wary of the government getting involved in choosing the winners and losers. I think it's better to just make Kentucky attractive to all businesses that want to start up here or move here, and see where it goes.
And it's interesting. I've only got a minute or two left, and I want to make sure you have an opportunity to promote your website and where folks can find you. But what I've found is that for libertarians, fighting crony corporatism is a winning issue on so many levels. Number one, we're right. Government has absolutely no place interfering in private markets whatsoever, whether it be taxpayers, tax support, whether it be giveaways, any of it. It just needs to end now. We need to move towards as close to free market as possible. I find that it's also a winning issue, though, in terms of progressives who might now be looking askance, if you will, at their woeful track record of the socialist insurgency within the progressive movement, who seem to want to give away the world. One of the most popular young drinking games in recent days is having a shot every time a socialist presidential candidate uses the word free. It has incapacitated significant parts of the youth population in liberty communities, if you will, because they're just so hell-bent to give it free. But at the same time, we show that we as a movement are not hypocritical about welfare, that we see corporate giveaways as evil, that we are not Koch brother loving, corporatists. No, we see it. We support the free market. We embrace capitalism in its purest form, and we disavow any relationship whatsoever with corporate welfare. And that's a winning issue, I believe, across the country for libertarians, because I believe it shows the purity and the sincerity of our philosophy. I've only got a minute or so. How can folks find your campaign? I've got this beautiful website right running up above. Again, it's HicksCormicanForKentucky.com. What do you have any events coming up and any money bombs? If folks hear your plight, how can they contribute? How can they help?
Well, there is a volunteer sign-up form. Wait, now I should. I'm just learning this. Sorry, there's a donate form on our website. Go there. But there's also a volunteer form or a feedback form where you can volunteer. So if you're in the area and want to get involved, by all means, get us your contact info. I'm going to try to be on the road as much as I can. It's a wide state, so it's a 3-hour drive from Louisville to Western Kentucky isn't probably longer than that to Eastern Kentucky. But I'm going to try to get out and meet as many people as I can. Part of what we're doing this year is trying to build the party and recruit candidates for next year. Next year we can run somebody for all 100 members of our House of Representatives, half of the state Senate, our 6 Congress people. We're going to have 1 senator that's up for election. I think his name is something like McConnell.
Yeah, somebody.
Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
He's up for re-election. So it's going to be an interesting year. So we're part of what I'm doing is talking up next year, and that means meeting as many libertarians as I can. We've got, I believe it's 9,000 or so libertarians registered across the state. So I'm going to try to meet as many of them as I can and build the party, and along the way try to get as many votes as I can. Lightning can strike. I think the neat thing is the two candidates that I'm running against are so they're just playing right into my hands. Don't tell them this. But they hate each other so that people just might get disgusted by November, and that could be the governor. So, but don't tell anybody.
No, it's our little secret. Listen, God bless you for what you're doing. When I looked across the challenges that Larry Sharp faced geographically in a state like New York, and I look at the diversity, the beauty, but yet the diversity and the geographical challenges, the multiple media markets, all of that, when you run in a state like Kentucky, they're immense. And at the same time, all of us, we're activists. We still have to maintain our lives and our employment. We're not in that position to simply just shut it all down and find some backdoor way to get paid to run, like so many of our special friends in the duopoly. So I nothing but the best. Have fun tomorrow at Fancy Farm. Folks can still call. Folks can call forever, as far as I'm concerned. These folks need to, learn a little bit about the path of truth and righteousness. And I have a feeling you're going to deliver that to folks, even if you're just simply working the crowd at the Fancy Farm Festival tomorrow, and have plenty of barbecue. And do me a favor, send us some pictures, okay, of you of you working the crowd. All right, sir?
Very good. Okay, thank you so much, Dad. Enjoy talking with you.
All right, John Hicks, he is running to be the governor of the great state of Kentucky. And when I mean great states, I mean I didn't even get a chance to ask him his favorite bourbons. That'll be next time. Support him, make a donation, support his efforts to get on the speaker's rostrum at debates. This is where we need to come together as a coalition, as an organization, as a philosophy. When we reach out and touch folks who are trying to disenfranchise us, we are a powerful group. We are the coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media. We're going to take a very quick break right now, and we're going to bring folks on from Orange County and L.A. to talk about a hell of a fundraiser they're having tonight. Stay tuned. We're literally going to be back in a minute.